Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see many people in this webinar. Another webinar that has been organized to support Central Asian community of researchers. My name is Gulzat Botoeva. I'm senior lecturer at Roehampton University here in London. And I have two colleagues in here today joining us for this wonderful webinar. Dorothea Schaefter, Senior Editor, Asian Studies at Routledge Central Asia Research Forum book series, and then Dr. Harun Yilmaz, who is an academic editor. Today's webinar is organized by London Central Asia Research Network, and Harun and me have been members of this network for many years now. And we have tried to organize some other webinars in the past too. So I'm really glad to continue this kind of tradition. And what we're trying to do today is give access to the editors. And Harun also is an editor, academic editor himself at the Routledge Forum book series. So I will just give the floor then to Dorothea Schaefter, and Dorothea prepared a presentation for around 20 minutes. And then Harun will take over for another 10 or 15 minutes. And after that, we will have a Q&A session. So I will ask you to keep your questions for the Q&A session, and then you will have the opportunity to ask them yourselves when we finish the presentation. Yeah, if we can go ahead then. So the floor is yours, Dorothea.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Gulzat. Thanks, Harun. Thank you, everybody who's joining today. My name is Dorothea Schaefter. I'm a senior commissioning editor at Routledge. I have worked at Routledge for about 15 years or so, or as commissioning editor. So I look after our Central Asia part of the list, South Asia and Southeast Asia. And I have a background in Asian studies as well. So I really enjoy seeing, helping other researchers and helping people to really, and young authors and established authors to publish their books. So it really gives me joy. So thank you for being able to present today, and I will share my screen. And I've got like I said, like Gulzat said, a presentation of about 20 minutes where I will run you through a little bit how to publish with Routledge and give you some overview of the publication process. So I'll share my screen. Yeah. I hope you can all see this. Gulzat, can you just confirm that you can see? All right.
Yes, it's perfect.
Wonderful. Well, I'll just talk about Routledge quickly and why you should consider publishing with Routledge. A little bit of information about the Routledge Asian Studies list and the Central Asia Research Forum series. I'll go into how to submit a book proposal and what's different about a book proposal for a book based on a PhD thesis. I'll continue on to talk about the referee process and the contract, and then the publishing process, and finally the market and how books are sold. And there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions, so I really look forward to answering your questions at that stage. So Routledge Books is quite established. It's an established academic publisher founded in 1836 in the UK, and Taylor & Francis bought the company at the end of the 1990s, and which just expanded our publishing offering. And since 2004, we're part of Informa, which is a big information company, which is also listed on the stock market. Taylor & Francis is Routledge and CRC Press, the science part of the company. And we publish about 7,000 books a year. And some key online products. So we really publish everything as all books are published in ebook format, but we're doing other innovative projects such as the Handbooks Online project, which is just available for libraries to purchase online as well. We have a very large backlist of about 200,000 titles, and most of that backlist has been digitalized, which is quite helpful. We are lots of members of staff, actually. I don't know the exact number, but we're located globally in the UK, in the US, also in Europe. There are 2 offices in Asia, no, 3 actually. There's an office in China, an office in India, and an office in Singapore. And then we also have an office in Australia. And not everywhere is editorial staff, but we have sales staff and marketing staff as well. So why should you publish with Routledge? Well, as I said earlier, we're a global company. We've got offices all over the globe, but we also really sell the books and the products globally. So there's a dedicated sales force and a dedicated sales and marketing team. So we really ensure that we have a global distribution of the books. Routledge is recognized for quality. We have quite established authors that are publishing with us, going back to Sartre or Bertrand Russell, or in the kind of philosophy part, but also on Asian studies. I mean, we've got Shirin Akina, who's published with us, and obviously who founded the Central Asian Research Forum series. You should also publish with Routledge, or consider publishing with Routledge, because we have a dedicated editorial team. So doing the proposal and review process, you would be assisted by myself and also by Harun, who's the academic editor of the Central Asia Research Forum series. But this is also true for other parts of Routledge. So our editors are usually very open to questions and provide a helping hand. And also, finally, one of the key selling points of why I also think that Routledge is a good publisher to publish with is that we have an efficient production team, and we publish to high standards. The Routledge Asian Studies list is a very big list. We are considered market leaders in the field, and we have lots of different sub-disciplines within Asian studies that we publish the books in. And also a range of regions, such as listed here. So Central Asia is one important part of the list. Here are just some titles that were published in the Central Asia Research Forum series. The series goes back quite a long time, actually. It was established also at the end of the 1990s, when Curzon Press still existed, but then was taken into the Routledge fold, and since then has been going from strength to strength. So Harun is the series editor. Questions can be directed to him or to me. I will share my email address later as well. So we publish really cutting-edge research in the field of Central Asian studies in print and in ebook. We have monographs that are typically between 80 and 100,000 words in length, but there's also short form books that can be published, which are usually longer than a journal article, but shorter than a monograph, so maximum 50,000 words. All books can be considered for paperback publication approximately 18 months after the hardware publication. We have the option of open access, which is gaining more importance in the publishing world. So if there's any questions, please direct them to Harun or me, and I'm happy to answer them. And of course, like I said, the series is established part of the list. So the first thing that you should do is think about submitting a book proposal when you're interested in publishing with the series. The website of the Routledge, the Routledge website has lots of information. At that link, how to publish with us, it gives you some background on the publishing process and what we would look for in a proposal as well. You can contact Harun or myself for any potential book project. but we would then ask you to put together a formal book proposal. This is usually about 4 to 6 pages long. It should include a rationale of the project, a table of contents, and chapter summaries as well, so short abstracts per chapter. You should give some indication about the readership and the market for your book, list any related titles or titles that can be seen as competition, and the length of the manuscript as you envisage it, usually between 80 and 100,000 words, and the timeline when you intend to deliver the final manuscript. Once Harun and I have decided that this is a topic or a book that should be, that would fit the series, then we would ask you to send some additional material. You can also provide your CV at an earlier stage, which would be helpful. The guidelines that I will put up later will ask for a CV at that time. So your proposal, your CV, and we would ask you for 3 sample chapters, which we usually then send to academic advisors in the field. So Harun and I will decide on those. The key criteria for accepting a book proposal at that stage will be commercial viability from my side, and Harun will check the academic quality, and we will obviously see whether it fits the series. There are a few things to consider when you're looking at publishing your PhD thesis. So the first thing is really that we don't publish a PhD thesis. We publish a book that's based on the series, on the thesis. Apologies. The thesis is a different product than a book because it has a different audience. So you should really think about that the book has a wider readership. You should foreground your findings. You should take out the literature review and maybe include the references in the bibliography. You could consider widening the coverage of the thesis. You can restructure some of the content. Sometimes it's useful to add some comparative analysis just to make it a bit more marketable and a bit wider in terms of the audience. Absolutely essential is a strong introduction and a conclusion. And then it's always good to have a clear and descriptive titles with keywords that can easily be found. So like I say here on the slide, use the PhD as a base and build upon it. So once we have the proposal, the sample chapters, and the CV available, we would send the material out to our academic advisors. It's a confidential process and it's anonymous, so you wouldn't know the referees, but they would know of your identity. We usually say it takes about 2 to 3 months until we get the readers' reports back. Then those readers' reports would be assessed by the series editor and by myself, and we would add any additional questions and ask you to comment on them and respond to the queries raised in the report. If then all is well, and we've received your response and we're happy with that, I would present the book to my editorial board, and they then decide whether to accept, reject, or suggest a revision and a resubmission. Often at that stage, though, I feel quite confident that that the book should get accepted, just because we would discuss it. Harun and I would discuss the project and would already see at that stage whether a revision and resubmission, for example, would be desirable. So once that editorial board meeting has taken place, we would offer you a contract, and in the contract of most, it's a legal document, and obviously we would then decide on title, the delivery date, the length of the book, and any other issues such as royalties. There are some clauses that protect the publishers and clauses that protect you in your role as authors. The contract is now signed electronically, so it all goes fairly swiftly. We send it via a secure system by email. Up until the delivery of the final manuscript in forms, we ask you to keep in touch with us. So you should let us know if you run into any problems, or you let us know if you've got any questions. Because in addition to the manuscript, we also ask you to submit some forms. So forms for a copy editor or permission declaration forms that you have obtained permission. So the assistant on the list and myself, as well as Harun, will be available for queries at that time. You've then sent in your final manuscript. So we would then assess it, and the series editor would approve it. And we would then prepare the handover to the production team. After the handover, the book will be assigned to a production editor, and they will manage the production process, which takes on average 6 months. And that includes copy editing, typesetting, proofreading, creation of the index on the basis of the final proofs, and then, of course, the printing. And then finally, the book will be printed and made available in print and in ebook format. And then the marketing obviously starts usually at handover. At the time that the book is handed over to the production team, we usually add your book to our website, so then it is possible to promote the book. So the main market for our monograph and reference program is the international academic library market. So we target the books to the international academic library market are sold via aggregators and consortia and library suppliers. And then the textbooks that we also publish on the list, they are usually sold via university bookshops, and they are for student use. Of course, our books are also sold online via the Routledge website, via Amazon or other booksellers. We have the possibility of advertising the books via email campaigns and, of course, social media. And we also always ask you as an author to include a link to your book via your own social media account. So Twitter is a good one, a good medium to promote the book, LinkedIn, Facebook, Academia Edu, and others. And then finally, there's the possibility of publishing your book open access, which of course ensures that the book is available to a wide audience in ebook format. This is usually dependent on the funding of that authors obtain from either their research funders or their universities, and that can be discussed with myself and the open access team at Routledge. All in all, the kind of path from kind of having the book idea and the publication of the book takes about, say, 3 months for the peer reviewing process, and then 6 months in production, and then in between the time that you take to write the book. So on average, I think a book can be published within 18 months to 2 years. And it's always very exciting to see the books in print. For today, we have a special offer as well, in case you're interested in books in the series. So if you use the discount code FLY21, then you can get a 20% discount on all the books in the series. And I will post this link in the chat later. And then I hope this was clear enough and I didn't talk too quickly. And I hope that you will have some questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothea. Shall I give the floor to Harun now? And then we can move on to the Q&A session, yeah?
That sounds like a great idea, because Harun obviously has published with us as well. So he's got one book published, that the National Identity in Soviet Historiography, and that was published a few years back now. And Harun has another book under contract, so he can really give you some insight how it is as an author of working with Routledge.
Excellent. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the organization, and also Dorothea, thank you very much for your great presentation. So I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things based on what you said, especially for the ones who are about to finish their PhDs or finished and they are thinking about publishing their thesis. Based on my experience as well, a couple of years back. First of all, of course, PhD thesis, they are, I mean, everyone who did a PhD knows that it's a huge, a long travel, a difficult mental journey. With some material obstacles as well along the way, and you want to, as an author, you want to share your findings with the broader world. And I'm sure, I mean, I was excited as well in that sense. On the other hand, as Dorothea mentioned, PhDs are not, PhD theses are not one-to-one book texts. So they need some revision. Well, actually, if you have asked me if I done at that moment a perfect job, I'm not sure. I'm always very self-critical. An improvement area for me, so I shouldn't be that critical. But overall, it's a bit it's a difficult thing to do because you invest 3-4 years writing that text, and your mind now is in a way formatted in a certain way because you constantly interact with the same text over and over. And I have written my first chapter, for instance, probably rewritten 3-4 times. So I start to see Stalin in my dreams, you know, start to speak with Kaganovich. So it was like you constantly interact with the text and you become like a kind of half crazy. And after 4 years, you finish it, and someone says, "Hey, this text is not the text we can publish. You need to review it." Well, it might be a daunting moment, but there is some important truth there because when you write the PhD, you want to convince that 3 people, 3 individuals or 4 individuals, depending on the system, like your supervisor or supervisors, I had 2, and then examiners, I had 2. So 4 people that you had done your best. You know your subject well, and there is no doubt that you can have this title, like the master in your field, in a way. And you can later on even accept apprentice, like PhD candidate. So it's kind of a status like this, right? So so that's why you try to sometimes go into minute details in the text, bombard with citations. Citations becomes like this, especially in history field, you know, and the whole aim there is to convince that 4 people that you know your subject well, 100%, no doubt about it. They will not have a question in their mind. But the book readers, when the book is published, they need, of course, a genuine original aspect you bring with your book, because mostly academic books are read by other scholars. But the flow of the text should be more accompanying, you know, for instance, the reader, like reader shouldn't be distracted with some sidelines, alleyways, that reader shouldn't get lost in too much detail where you originally put there to convince your supervisor and examiners, for instance, right? Because reader has a limited of time, and perhaps they are looking for a certain aspects in the book. They will just cite your book in their research. So the flow of the text should, I think, should be can be slightly different to accommodate the needs of the broader readership, not just for individuals. And the other point I wanted to make is publishing is a journal article or a book is I think is an important aspect of an academic career. Wherever we are, like in Britain, in the US, in Kazakhstan, it doesn't matter. Publishing is an important aspect of an academic career. And publishing at an early stage, I think is important to build a successful academic career. Too much hesitation, or because the same thing happens in the journal article publishing as well. Shall I publish in this journal or that journal? Shall I publish the book with this publishing house or that publishing house? Or there are so many cons and pros, I don't know which one to choose. Sometimes it's important to be decisive and go forward, you know, and not to think too much, because there's no perfect world. In business, for instance, 80% is enough, but in academia, of course, everyone tries to do 100%. A minor, you know, a comma or a full column can be very important. But when it comes to publishing and building an academic career, I think it's important to publish it at the end of the day. And in that sense, I found Routledge, when I published, I was not the series editor at that time. I was just another fellow, you know, another writer, another researcher. So, their swift reaction and publishing it, not dragging it for many years, you know, like as a project, it helped me to build my own career. It boosted my CV, and then it brought me to another level in my applications to some other fellowships, for instance. You know, I assume perhaps in my British Academy Research Fellowship, for instance, or Harvard Fellowship. So that's why it's important to have that in your basket, that in your you know, in your CV, if it's possible. Instead of hesitating, instead of ending up with someone with publishing house where your project stays there for a long period, then it will, because unless it's published, nobody will know it. That's simple. And you might say, okay, it will be published in 3 years' time in job applications, you know. But I have seen in interviews, for instance, faces like when I first, before I published, I mean, I'm planning to publish it. Like faces like this in the interview, you know, you want it, but is it going to be published? When you have a solid book, or at least contract, or it will be published in 3 months time, you will see it. Or if you have the book, then I think it's a different thing in academic career. So this is all I wanted to say to emphasis on these 2 points. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Harun. Thank you, Dorothea. So shall we open the floor for questions or comments or I don't know, suggestions?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you raise your hand by this electronic function of raising hand, and then I think it will bring you up in the chat or this view mode. Okay, I see 2 hands raised or 3 now. So I think Annika, your name is first, so I'll just go one by one. Yeah.
Before that, just
Yeah.
can I just interrupt for 1 second? I'm very sorry, Annika. Shall we share the document at this point, or what shall we do? The application form.
I will do. I'll add that now.
It's just a form that, in a compact way, explains step by step what we expect from the authors. So it will be very useful, I think. This is a proposal guideline, proposal format.
I've sent it just now on the chat. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
If you like, if you consider it would be useful to download it and check it out later on as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Annika.
Hey, hello. My name is Annika Schmieding. Thank you so much actually for those presentations. It was really informative, especially for somebody who's just finishing also with their PhD and working on different projects. And I can totally say that what Harun just said is very true. I did publish a chapter actually with one of the Routledge volumes, and I found it actually a really good process. What I wanted to ask right now is more from the other perspective, which is I'm working on editing a volume potentially that could fit with that. Are there any differences that what you would expect in terms of a book proposal when it comes to an edited volume versus a monograph, what you'd like to see? And also in terms of like how many of the chapters you would like to see, or all of them, because of course like edited volumes have potentially very different quality even, you know, of like the different writers. So yeah, if you could elaborate a bit on that, that would be very interesting for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. In a way, the process is the same, but what we require is a book proposal and the editor's CV, information about the contributors, and then of course, it will have to be an edited volume that is conceived as an edited volume. It's not just conference papers that are kind of loosely put together. It has to have a kind of red thread going through. It has to really be coherent. And then for the peer review process, we required 3 chapters plus the draft introduction. The introduction at that stage, if you only have a few chapters that are ready, that are prepared for the peer reviewing process, and the introduction can be in draft form. But it would be good to have that document just because it puts, it has the theoretical foundations of and the methodology that's applied in the edited volume. I think also if you know that your edited volume is going to be in different parts, then 1 chapter per section could be very helpful just as a representative chapter. So, but there's no limit on how many chapters you can submit. I mean, if you're happy, if you think that, oh yeah, 5 chapters are already ready for review, then please send them. That's always helpful. And then the process is exactly the same. So.
Thank you. That was really a good question. I think there is a raised hand by Sherzod Eraliyev. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you cannot hear me. I should have probably turned on the lights, but it's light enough on my side. So my name is Sherzod Eraliyev. I am a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Helsinki. I wanted to address I wanted to ask Dorothea a couple of questions. You said it would take from 18 months to 2 years for an ebook to be published in paper format, right?
No, Oh, sorry to correct that. All books are published in paper format, so in print format and in ebooks. So as a hardback and as an ebook at the same time. And then 18 months later, a paperback can be published.
Oh, okay. So can be published. I mean, that doesn't mean it will be published, right?
More and more, we publish all of our books in paperback, unless a book hasn't sold very well. But we're moving towards that direction, that most of our titles will be available in paperback after circa 18 months.
Mm-hmm. So the question of commercial viability is the main factor here.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And about the price of open access publication, what factors do you weigh in there? I mean, let's say 100,000 words monograph. I mean, how would you define the price of open access, and what is it like? I mean, how much is it like?
At the moment, so those book processing charges, they vary according to product. So a handbook, which is a reference work, would be more expensive than a monograph of 100,000 words. If we don't specify, if it's a monograph of 80,000 words, that's the same price as a monograph of 100,000 words, just because it's in the same category as monograph. At the moment, the conversion fees are about £10,000 for the entire book. And then for one chapter, it's 1,500. But these, obviously, this is the current state, 23rd of April, 2021. So it's it might change. So it's always best to check with us what the fee is. And I know with the University of Helsinki, we've got quite a good established relationship already on open access. So it's definitely possible. So.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking here is that the university administration is more. I mean, overall academia in Scandinavia and Finland is more pushing for open access publications. That's the reason I'm interested in that. Thank you.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Sherzod. I think I've seen Sophia also raised a hand before. Sophia, do you still have the question? Do you want to ask?
Well, I have a question, I guess, to Harun. My general question would be, are you looking for anything specific in your Central Asian Routledge series? Do you have some envisaged plan of what sort of topics you would be selecting for particular years, or which sort of books you are looking at from different disciplinary perspective? So if you can elaborate a little bit on the selection process of books for Central Asian series. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, when I look at the previous years and previous publications, around I think 30 titles published, there is obviously, and this is also in general in publications on Central Asia, the predominant authors of the books published on Central Asia have been Western authors. Now there is let's say general understanding in the field as well that, and I completely agree with that. After 1991, many students from the region, they ended up in Western universities, so they become familiar with Western literature as well, disciplines, and it's not only about the literature, but concepts that generated and the discussions in that literature. So now there's a new generation in Kazakhstan, in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and so on, they have the skills and facilities to have the local grassroots knowledge and understanding, and at the same time have the format, education, and knowledge of this literature, Western literature as well. Now they are climbing the academic career ladder as well successfully. That's why I mean, as a series, in terms of disciplines, series is open to all disciplines. It can be archaeology, it can be economics, linguistics, as long as it's about Central Asia, and in a broader sense of Central Asia as well. But in terms of these authors, I personally I see this rising stars, let's say, from the region, and combining these two worlds in a way. I think the book series should be also a good platform in terms of keeping a good balance between authors who had this Western format, but from the region, and authors from the West. This is something I think discussed as well in Central Asian conference at some point. Another scholar told me about, I can't remember the name. So that the book awards are not given still to successful publications written by the scholars from the region. There's kind of, as I understand, there is also I think this is not a good practice, and book series should actually, in that sense, support those young rising stars from the region who manage to go through that Western format as well, and familiar with the Western literature, and combine, you see, different territories of knowledge in a way. But in terms of discipline, the series is open to all disciplines, and the territory can be, not only the 5 ex-Soviet republics. That's a political definition of Central Asia, but Central Asia is not isolated in that sense. I mean, it can also include. I'm just giving an example, like Iranian-Kazakhstan relations. Iran is not a Central Asian country, but it's a relation with a Central Asian country there, or historical works. That was an IR example, but historical works, of course, cannot be contained to contemporary borders. So nomadic formations and so on. This Deshti Kıpçak, where it starts from Lake Baikal, ends up in the Crimea. So how can you define within these 5 republics in a historical work like that? It's not possible. That's why it's a broader Central Asia, let's say, and all disciplines, as long as the work, as long as the proposal as a cutting-edge feature, as long as it brings a new dimension, it has something to say to the academic world, something new. That's what I see things, how I see things.
Thank you, Harun. Are there more questions?
There is one question in the chat column. I think that's for me question to Harun. How can one see those too much little details in a thesis when reworking it into a book? That's a brilliant question. So it's, you know, it's about also, like sometimes when I try to explain how to write a good journal article, you know, it sometimes comes with practice, unfortunately. But in this case, of course, when you are transforming it into from a PhD thesis to a book, I guess to remind yourself the aim of the book, going back to your proposal and reading the abstract again when you are lost in the details, to be focused, like sharp focused, like this, like a locomotive, you know, not to too much distract by too many details in the mind. Also, I think it's in a way mindset. You see, which answers sometimes this crucial question: I need this detail? Do I need this paragraph in the text, or can this paragraph be summarized into 3 sentences, for instance, right? It can be a brutal, in that sense, experience, but it's a constant, I think, mental exercise, and it's all about reminding yourself what the book is really about, do you have that detail originally in your PhD with this worry that you wanted to show your supervisor or the examiners a certain aspect you are very familiar of, or is it really bringing a value to the text and bringing the reader to the conclusions you want to present or the things you want to convince the reader, you know, what you want to exactly convey to the reader's attention, what you want in a way, how you want his mind formatted after reading your chapter or book eventually. So what kind of additional things you want to bring. Yeah, it's a constant exercise in a way when you are revising the text, and perhaps a good way to do is just to give yourself 1-2 months, or if possible a bit more, a break after submitting and after the viva, after the examination, you know, of your thesis, just to have a mental break. You know, it also happens when you write a text, an article as well, a journal article. You look at it, and then after it happened, I wrote an article, and then did this publication delayed, and then after a year, when I look at the article, I didn't like it. So, and I had to. I said, "Excuse me, I need another month to rewrite it." So, a bit of a mental break. A space, you know, to clean those gray cells in your brain, in your as Hercule Poirot says, you know, I need some cleaning for my green cells in my brain. So if you give a mental break, I think it can be really helpful. Then you can, because more you interact with the text, you become so much familiar with it. It becomes nearly impossible to see those things. You see, that's why we have, of course, in academia, peer review system. But to be a reviewer of yourself, I think needs those mental breaks.
Thank you, Harun. I think we have also 2 more raised hands. So Elena Kim, I'm glad to see that you're here.
Yes, Gulzat, hello. Hello, colleagues. Well, I'm so grateful you organized this session because this is so timely for researchers like myself, and I'm sure many others. I have a question to Dorothea. The situation that I'm considering for myself is the following. I have a number of articles that have already been published in peer-reviewed journals, but they're sort of all over the plays in terms of the readership. So I wanted to publish a book that would heavily draw on these articles, and I wondered whether there is such a possibility to publish a book that would consist of chapters, and each chapter would be a version of the articles that have already been published, and then the book would have an introduction that would provide like a framework for these different pieces of research and a conclusion.
I see what you are trying to achieve with that book, because you want to bring it all together. What I would usually say, we usually say that 2/3 of the book should be original material and 1/3 can consist of previously published material. So if you could expand it and add some more research, that would just really make the monograph larger and not just have those what did you say, 4 articles or 5 articles, just to really bring in more research, then that would be possible. If it is really just that the key chapters are based on those articles, then I think for Routledge that wouldn't be commercially viable, just because the chapters are, or the articles are available. So I think if you expand it, but you could always, think about it and see what is necessary, which articles do you definitely need to include, where can you expand, or do you actually need to quote them verbatim, or so you can always send in a proposal and we can have a look at it, and then make a little bit more informed suggestions. But I would say as a general rule, we say original material, 2/3 should be previously unpublished. But yeah, you're always welcome to seek our feedback. I think that's always possible. So it's, I think I wanted to highlight that earlier as well. I think editors at commercial or at publishing houses are humans as well. We're happy to answer questions. We're happy to discuss things as well. And Harun is the same. We are human beings that are at the other end of the email. So it's always worth asking a question. So yeah.
Thank you. Got it.
Nice to see you, Elena.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, sorry. We have another person also raising a hand, and I don't want to mispronounce the name. It says Tubasungur. Hi.
Yes, hi. Hi, thank you very much for this panel. My question actually has been answered, I think, but still I wanted to ask, it's generally recommended to PhD holders to publish at least a part of their dissertation as a journal article first. You have already said that at least 1/3 of the monograph should be original. My question is this, having a journal article, would it be an advantage to publish a monograph, or can I just send my monograph before publishing it anywhere else? Thank you very much.
Both goes. Obviously, having a journal article proves that you can write for an academic audience. So I think it's always helpful. So sometimes when I ask for some sample material, I also ask for, and I see in the author's CV that a journal article is published on the same subject as the monograph. Then I will ask for that article to be submitted alongside. And as I said, that shows that you have experience in writing for an academic audience. But then likewise, it also goes that you haven't published and your monograph can be considered. I think, as you mentioned earlier, though, it is more common practice that you actually, during the course of your PhD research, you're encouraged also by your supervisors to publish. So I think it is up to you in which current setup you are, I think, as well. So maybe Harun has something to say about that too.
Yeah, actually, you gave all the details, important aspects here, Dorothea. I can only add probably everyone knows that all PhD candidates closer to the while they are writing up their thesis, or in the first year after finishing their PhD thesis, they are under pressure of publishing an article for the job market. There's a competition, and they want to publish something. Ideally, one of the best chapters they are proud of to publish in a journal article, and also some journals have long waiting periods, like you submit, but it can be published in 2 years' time, 1 year time. There is this, again, pros and cons. You see, I didn't go to the #1 publisher, #1 journal in my field. I went to, let's say, #2 in order to publish my chapter at the time. And I'm very happy because it was published quicker, and it was on my CV again. And that's why at Routledge also, I mean, we also know that you have under this pressure. So if you come with a book proposal where a chapter out of 5 chapters, for instance, already published in a journal, that's not a negative thing. On the contrary, as Dorothea said, it's actually a seal of endorsement, approval that you went through the publishing experience. The text was peer-reviewed, and then a journal, considering that it's a good academic journal, already published. So it actually makes life easier for everyone. That's why, in a way, as they say, making your first million is difficult, but the second million of dollars is easier than earning the first million, kind of. So when you have that article published in a peer-reviewed journal, it makes life, I think, easier for everyone. It's a good reference point in that sense. Yeah.
And I just want to add that permissions, for example, usually because you're the author of that article, and then if you say you want to publish the journal article as part of your monograph, usually publishers have no objections to that and grant permission, and then that can be supplied to the monograph publisher then as well. So that usually isn't a hindrance.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
And also, if journal is published by the Routledge group, Taylor and Friends, because there are hundreds of journals they publish, right? It even becomes even more easier because it's under the same roof. So this is what I have been told. I think.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's easier. So if you publish in Central Asian Survey, for example, then it's easy to obtain permission because that's a TNF journal. So, yeah, good question as well. There's loads of good questions. I'm very excited. Thanks for providing this forum. Really, I'm pleased to be able to answer.
I think we do have another raised hand, but there was another question in the chat. Aida Ali was asking, is it okay if a person sent a book proposal to a couple or a few of the publishers? So Aida, do you want to speak up, or is it okay? I think her internet connection.
No, okay.
I know Aida, she might have the internet connection problem sometimes.
Well, I'm happy to answer like this. From my point of view, it is because we work for a commercial publisher that you are not committed to any publisher until you've signed a contract. But of course, it is courtesy to kind of let the commissioning editor know that you've submitted it to another press. And then I can't speak for other presses because they take a completely different view. So it can really be that certain presses, they just really want exclusive submission. Whereas, because like I said, I personally take the view that, you have a choice as well. And, sometimes it takes time to solicit some referee reports because the referees are busy or so. And if you're under time pressure, why not? But as I said, it would be courteous to let me know and let Harun know that you've approached somebody else. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my view. Harun, you might have a different view.
I completely agree.
Okay. We do have another raised hand. Elena, do you still want to ask a question, or is it from before?
This is from before. Let me lower it. Sorry.
I think we have Annika Schmedding again. Yep.
Sorry to ask so many questions. I just wanted to quickly ask two things, the things that we usually don't talk about, which is money, which is one of them is indexing. Does like Routledge pay for it, or do I as an author have to pay for indexing? Because I heard that somewhere that sometimes the authors need to pay for that. And the second point is in terms of like royalties. I mean, I know we academics, we don't get rich from anything that we publish, but like what is the usual percentage that would be offered to authors? I actually have no idea how that works with edited volumes, but anyhow, yeah, just curious.
I'm happy to answer that. So the index, you have on the Asian studies list, you have two options. Either you do it yourself, the index, on the basis of the page proofs, which is fairly easy actually to do once you know your keywords, because it's a PDF. You can search for the keywords, and it is a job that is doable, in my personal opinion. Also, as an author, you know which keywords somebody who's interested in the subject would like to look up. So I actually quite encourage authors to do the index on their by themselves. Of course, there is the possibility that we commission a professional indexer for you, and then you would be invoiced for the fee. And that really, at the moment, I don't want to be quoted just yet. So, but it used to be in the region of £300, I think. But that figure has gone down because we go by words now. But again, then you'd be sent an invoice and you'd be informed of how much approximately that would be. So you can decide that you have to make a decision on what option you take before the book gets handed over to the production team. So an editorial assistant would ask you, what is your preference? And then in terms of royalties, unfortunately, because I mean, Asian studies, yes, it's a great subject and we have global reach and everything, but we do have to kind of make sure that the book makes a little bit of a profit. So usually our royalty rates are not very high. I think the highest that I've given is 5% or even 2% from the start, and then raising royalty rates. But the 5% is usually only for textbooks or for handbooks or for bigger, or after a threshold of books sold. So it really, Asian studies, I think, is maybe also a bit different to some other lists, but because we publish quite a large number of titles and we want to sustain that, just because we feel that, you know, there's so much interesting research being done, but it has to be profitable for us as well. So, but good point to raise the question about money. It's always, you know, if you've got me here, so.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? I also had the question myself, but you already answered it. It was about the articles, and then you know, is it possible to combine? But yeah, both of you, I think, answered that question already. Any more questions or comments?
I just added the discount code and the link to the series page, so you can all have a look at what books have been previously published in the series. So.
Aida has one more question in the chat. Yeah. Do you want to ask?
Typing is not that easy from the phone. I try to ask this way probably. If after the publishing a book, would it be okay to publish the book in Russian or Kyrgyz, for example? Of course, with some changes or what, that to make it available to the auditory, to the target group, let's say. And thank you very much for this event. It's just so on time.
I think that's a great question too, because I failed to mention that in my presentation, and it's actually quite a big part of our publishing activities is our foreign rights department, who deal with translations of our books and deals with other publishers. So there is always, I would suggest that when you submit a proposal, you can always mention that you're interested in publishing the book in another language at the later stage. And then we can already begin discussions with our foreign rights team. If it is for a region where we don't have any contacts, then you also, you can discuss with us if you can keep the rights for that language. But for example, Russian, I would say that we would have contacts with the foreign rights team, and obviously then we would liaise with the local publisher, and then a translation would then have to be arranged. But obviously if you speak language and can do the translation yourself, then that's a plus. Did that answer the question? I think
Yes,
so.
thank you very much, Dorothea.
Great, Ida.
I just understand that in general, it is good from the beginning to be open with plans and questions, yeah? Just to clear up everything before the process starts.
Exactly, because then I can make some inquiries internally, and we can really just make sure that the expectations that you have are met, and that we can kind of find a solution from the beginning. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aida, for very good questions.
I have a quick comment to make. First of all, just to remind everyone that hopefully everyone who want to publish in the near future downloaded the proposal guidelines that Dorothea kindly shared in the chat. It's a bit now moved upwards, but it's there. Word document. It's very useful. I found it very useful. Suggest you to download it. And the second thing is about publishing house and this loyalty fees. Royalty fees remind me that. We do not, of course, when we published scholars, when we published our research, we all know that this is not a detective story or a love story, and it will unfortunately will not compete with Agatha Christie or something. But we want our work to be available for other researchers. Available in major libraries, university libraries, national libraries, regional libraries as well. So, you know, because there is a Central Asian researcher in Australia, there are, or in Japan, or in, I don't know, in Hungary, in Czechoslovakia. So, it's important if the publishing house has a good distribution and a prominent name where librarians are more confident, because when librarians also in the universities, you know, they have a budget. And they look at the new published titles and they purchase based on that list, for instance. So at that moment, it's important to work with a good publisher so that the distribution is strong, the name is prominent, where your book deserves, then your book deserves gets the deserved attention. That's why I think what I found in my experience working with Routledge back in time was this big value, and yeah, that's why. Here, in one word, probably not quantity, but quality matters. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun. Do we have any more questions? If we don't, we can end a bit earlier than we planned. We didn't plan it for too long, I think. And we can say thank you to Harun and Dorothea for coming and giving us a lot of suggestions and guidelines on how to publish with Routledge, especially with the Central Asia series. And thank you all also for coming. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.